Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to Vacations for Canadians Cruise Chat. We're really excited to be here again today. We've got this weekly event happening, and we're happy to have you join us. We've got some really exciting topics this evening. We've got Matt Houthby talking about Alaska, and we've also got Luke talking about cruise ship staterooms. So very timely because Alaska is such a popular destination right now, and a lot of people are sailing there or thinking about going for the next season. So I know that Matt and Luke have got some great things to share with us. So a little bit about ourselves. I again wanted to welcome you this evening and thank you for spending the hour with us. We've got a terrific destination highlight where Matt's going to walk us through all kinds of highlights of Alaska, when to go, what to pack, everything you need to know to get that Alaskan vacation underway. And then Luke has got some fantastic advice on how to select your stateroom, how they're categorized, and everything you need to know about picking the perfect place on your ship. So then at the end, of course, we've got the opportunity for some Q&A. So it's the Ask the Agent kind of session. So if you've got any questions at all about either of these topics or anything that we've got cruise related, don't be shy. Pop in the question in the chat and we'll be sure to get to that at the end of the session. We also have a draw at the end for everybody who's participating this evening. So in order to participate, all you need to do is let us know you're here. So just give us a quick comment and say hello. Let us know where you're coming from, or where you're watching from rather, and we will put you in the draw automatically. For that, we've got some great swag to give away. Tonight, it's a tote bag. So exciting stuff. But before we get into our topics, I'd like to share with you a little bit about who we are. So we are Vacations for Canadians, and we are a very energetic group of cruise consultants, and we really know cruising. So that is what our specialty is and is what we are really focusing on. You'll probably see our deals on our Facebook page, as well as our website, vacationsforcanadians.com. And essentially what we do is we feature some hot deals that we find. So we're really sniffing out those great bargains for you, either group rates that we secure, which are terrific value for your money, and all the different cruise lines. So not specific to any one line. And we post those deals out. And sometimes it's for a specific category, sailing, itinerary. And if you like that deal, you can let us know and we can help you get that secured. If it's not exactly what you're looking for, we're also specialists in finding what you are looking for. So maybe you've got a different cabin type in mind, or a different week, or a different destination. You can always reach us and we can customize that cruise for you. So I'd like to get us started. First, I'll introduce our first speaker, and that's Matt Houthby, and he's going to talk to us about Alaska. And then Luke is going to follow him with the stateroom piece. Over to you, Matt.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen. So welcome, everybody. Like Karen said, I'll be talking about Alaska tonight. And right away, I would like to start with why we all go, and that's to see the glaciers. And you know, I don't pride myself as being a professional photographer, but I took that exact photo myself on my Alaskan cruise. So just goes to show that on these cruises, you get right up there close and personal with these glaciers and have the ability to see them in their beautiful wonder. And you don't have to be a professional photographer with some high-end camera. I took that with my cell phone. So there just goes to show that anybody can bring home those everlasting memories of their getaway to Alaska. So let's get started. So what I'm going to talk about here is exactly what the cruise season is for visiting Alaska, the weather that you can anticipate when you're going there. I'm going to touch on some things that you might want to pack for your, as far as dress goes, and some essentials that you might want for bringing with you on that Alaskan cruise. Then I'm going to touch on the ports of call, some of the places that you may visit during your Alaskan cruise. And then lastly, I just want to talk about our land cruise tour options. So a lot of the cruise lines, in addition to those 7-night cruises that they have for Alaska, they also have the ability to add on a land portion at the end of your cruise where you can get further into the interior of Alaska and really get immersed in that experience with the great destination of Alaska. So kicking things off, again, a lot of pictures of me. Just dig in. You're gonna see a lot of me on this. So Alaskan cruise season, May to September. The prime months being obviously July and August. Those are the most attractive time to go. A lot of that, again, is based on weather. So just giving you an idea of what the weather range is like temperature-wise if you're on the bookends of that season. So we're talking about May and September. Those are obviously going to be the colder months. So at night, you're dipping down to almost freezing. You're like in the low numbers, 2, 3, 4 degrees. In the daytime, highs of the teens, like 13, 14 degrees. That's going to be your highs when you're in there in May and September. If you're getting into June or July, you're going to start to see that warm up, especially once you get into July, being sort of that sweet spot going into the beginning of August. So we're just starting to take that downward dip now of the temperatures as we get into the later parts of August. But for June into July and August, you're still going to see lows of around 10 at night, even dipping a little lower than there, especially in June or in this time as you get into the late parts of August. But in the daytime, you're going to get into the highs of high teens, low 20s, very comfortable. So it's especially in those summer months, it's a great time to go. What you can start to see like in the early months, this is of course when the wildlife is starting to return to, presentation vanished. I'll just keep talking. So the early months, you're going to see the vegetation is starting to return, and with that comes the wildlife that returns with it. So you're going to see the humpback whale starting to come in. It's salmon season, so you're going to see the salmon starting to come in. And then once we get into those warmer months and the vegetation is real lush, that's where you're going to start to see the real wildlife starting to appear. We're talking about the bears. We're talking about bald eagles. Juneau has the highest population of bald eagles in the entire world. So everywhere you go, they're like seagulls. They are everywhere. You can see them nesting on light posts or hydro poles. So they're everywhere. And then as you get into the later part of summer, that is the real peak season for salmon, but it's also the rainier time. So if you see that bottom picture of my wife and I with the rain slickers on, we went in August. So if you look at what we're wearing there, that gives you an idea of August. Even though I said that's the warmer time period, you can still see that we're wearing fleeces, or I'm wearing my toque. And then of course the rain slickers, because we got some serious rainfall, especially when you go into the rainforest, which in that photo, we're about to go into the rainforest area. So that's what we're wearing for that excursion. So that gives you a bit of an idea weather-wise on what you can expect over that course of the cruising season, going from May all the way to September. And of course, we have cruise deals throughout that entire time, of which we're right in the midst of right now. So talking about dress, again, there's a picture of my wife and I right from our ocean view balcony. So that same glacier that I started the presentation with, there it is right in the background, right from our balcony. So helpful hint that no one told me, because when I went on this cruise, I wasn't an agent yet. I never got to sit on a webinar like this for someone to tell me. But no matter where you are on the ship, if you have a view, the ship will do a turn and everyone gets a nice view of the glacier. Don't be the dum-dum like me who gets out of your room and runs from end of ship to try and get the best view of the glacier so that I can get that perfect photo, because the ship is going to do a 180-degree spin so that everybody can enjoy the view of the glacier from their balcony. So we had ordered room service. We were waiting for room service to come to our balcony. This was going to be at like 7 in the morning. We were going to get this perfect view of the glacier while we're eating our breakfast. Room service was late, and I thought, I'm not going to get to see the glacier. I'm sitting here waiting for room service, and I start to panic, and I get out of the room, and I run up and down the top of the ship so that I can get all the best pictures, while my wife just sits back and casually relaxes and enjoys herself, and the boat pivots. And of course, she gets this beautiful view from our balcony, and I come back all winded laughing, and there's the photo of us having a good laugh after I've done several sprints up and down the ship. So talking about clothing. Like I said, rainy season, so you want to have a good outer layer. So something waterproof, Gore-Tex jackets, things of that nature, something that you can have that really breaks the wind that you might encounter, as well as the rain. And And then a camera, you want to have a really good camera. Again, the way that cell phones are designed now, these pictures that you're seeing, they're taken with my cell phone and a selfie stick. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be high-end camera, but of course, if you do have one, bring all the lenses, get those wildlife photos, because while I can get great photos of glaciers that aren't really moving all that quick, wildlife a lot harder to capture. So having those high-end cameras where you can do burst photos and things like that, definitely worthwhile having. Binoculars. Now, depending on the room category that you have, there may be binoculars in your room, especially with the balconies and above. There may be binoculars in your room. However, they're not high-end binoculars. They are dime a dozen that they throw in all the staterooms, so they're not going to be the best binoculars. So if you have your own, bring your own, because you'll get a much better vantage point of wildlife, especially whales and things like that. When you're traveling through the passage, there's opportunities all the time to see wildlife either on the hillsides or in the water. Hat and gloves, you can see it right there. I mean, we're in our room. That's literally just on our balcony in August, and we're still wearing that. And that's not just for photo ops. We really needed it at that time in the morning. Again, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. We're out on our balcony right beside a glacier. You need it. So it's really good to have. But again, it goes in part and parcel with that layered clothing. It's good to have the warm clothes, but it's good to also be able to ditch them as the temperatures rise during the day. Sunglasses. I know we're not going to the Caribbean. We're not all sitting on a beach, but glacier sun reflection and snow sun reflection is a real thing. Even the reflection off the water. You will get clear periods of the day where it's going to be bright and sunny, but also the reflection of the sunlight off the ice, off the snow. If you go on any of the excursions where you go onto the glaciers, you're definitely going to want to have sunglasses. So I highly recommend that. The layered clothing, that's where you see like that fleece that I would have. That's my liner that goes under my Gore-Tex jacket. So if I have that Gore-Tex jacket, I have the fleece sweater that you see there, the zip-up sweater, and then I just have a t-shirt. That's it. Those are my layers so that I can strip down as it gets warmer, put it back on as the temperature starts to drop again. And then rugged footwear, and you want it to be warm, but you also want it to be waterproof. So just having that for any of those hikes. There's a lot of uneven terrain where you're going. So depending on what kind of excursions you want, having that good outdoor footwear that you can use for any of the hikes and things like that is highly recommended. Some of the things that I didn't add on there, obviously, like a waterproof phone case for your phone if you're using that as your camera. Insect repellent if you get into those summer months, especially if you're going into the rainforest, you will get attacked like you've never experienced before with mosquitoes when you get into the rainforest. We did an excursion where we went ziplining and the mosquitoes were just insane. A backpack so that when you shed those layers, you have somewhere to stow it all. And then when you need it to get those layers back on, you have them easily accessible. And then a portable charger for your devices, especially if you're using your phone as a camera, having that portable charger so that you can keep a battery charge going so that you can get these photos throughout the day so that you can have these memories. You know, a year later, I can still look back on this cruise and be able to retell every story just based off these photos that I have. All right, let's move right along to the next. So talking about the different ports of call. So I grabbed some great photos. Some of these are mine, some of them I borrowed, but that's because I didn't go to those ports. So the ones that I did go to are the top three. So Skagway, what you see there is the White Pass Railway. We did that excursion. It was absolutely amazing. They run it twice a day. So they'll have a morning route. They'll have an afternoon route. So we did the morning route, which was good and bad because in the morning, there was still a lot of heavy fog. So on the way out on our rail pass, we didn't get a lot of the scenery because of all the heavy fog. However, it turns around at the halfway point, comes back, and we had all the beautiful scenery on the way back when the fog lifted. But we did that because we also had an excursion in the afternoon. We really jammed as much in as we could. And that's where we went and we did the zip lining and we did a salmon bake. So the salmon bake was absolutely amazing. You know, some of the freshest fish you're ever going to have. And obviously, you know, just prime salmon straight out of the water and fried right up there, live music that they did for us. And it was just probably one of the greatest like immersive excursions that I've ever done. So we had a lot of fun doing that. And we did that in Skagway. So some of the other popular ones, like I said, there's helicopter tours that they offer out of Skagway, so you can go right up onto the glacier and be able to experience that. So some really good opportunities to be able to see a lot once you get off the ship in Skagway. Ketchikan, one of my favorite ports. It just feels like as soon as you step off the ship, this is literally downtown Ketchikan. So that photo I took as we walked into town, again, you can see all the clouds in those photos. Like this is August. There's a lot of rain, a lot of mist and fog, but we really enjoyed ourselves. But there are so many shops, and they offer all kinds of different native like crafts and stuff like that, and just amazing the craftsmanship in the different shops that you get to see. And so we bought a lot of souvenirs there. There's also the lumberjack show that happens right there downtown. It doesn't matter where you're walking around downtown, you can hear the crowds. They are boisterous. They go nuts for that lumberjack show, and it is very popular. A lot of people go and see it. So it is definitely a very popular attraction there. Also there, they do king crab fishing. So that is a very popular attraction. And we went to one of the restaurants there and had the king crab, and it was to die for. It was so amazing. Juneau, the picture speaks for itself. It has some of the best whale watching in the world. And it doesn't matter if you book it with the cruise line or you book it with a third-party vendor, they're all going to guarantee you will see a whale. Like, I've never gone anywhere else where I've done whale watching where they will put pen to paper and say, I 100% guarantee you're going to see a whale on this excursion. And they deliver 100% of the time. You will see them. There's humpback whales that are doing bubble feeding, where they literally use the white underside of their fin and reflect the sunlight to scare the fish up to the surface. And that's when they emerge, mouths wide open, and just grab all those fish that have swam up to the surface. Just unbelievable to see. But also in Juneau, you can go on a tour of Mendenhall Glacier. So you can do the helicopter tour, fly right onto, you literally land on the glacier. Then you can do dog sledding while you're on the glacier. It's just crazy. You're in like a whole nother universe when you do this kind of stuff. Now the bottom part is the ports that we didn't go to, but I'm still very familiar with. So Icy Strait Point, one of the very famous landmarks that's there that people like to do is the cable car that I captured there in the picture. However, there is also a lot of fishing tours that are offered there, and there's a lot of wildlife tours there. So there is definitely an opportunity to see those wildlife. So especially if you're going in those later summer months, so we're talking July and August, when the vegetation is real lush, like you see in the picture there with a lot of greenery, that's where you're going to see that wildlife come out, and you're really going to get an opportunity to see brown bears and grizzly bears and mountain goats. And so stray bald eagles that have lost their way from Juneau. So there's lots of great wildlife there. Glacier Bay, that's it. That's the view. Like it's unbelievable the amount of glaciers that you see as you pass through Glacier Bay. It is just absolutely stunning. And of course, with the erosion that's going on, this is something you've got to see. It is just such a sight to be able to be that close and see just how impressive these glaciers are. The last one that I put on there is Sitka. So sad to say, if you've watched The Proposal, the house from The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds' parents, when he brings Sandra Bullock out to meet his family, it's not in Sitka. So don't go to Sitka and look for Ryan Reynolds' parents' house from The Proposal, because it's not there. But it's still absolutely stunning. There's the Totem Village, which is a very popular attraction. As well as the ability to go kayaking and just go around all those little islands that you see in the picture there. And you're going to be right up close to wildlife. It's almost comparable to like when we got to do kayaking in the Galapagos. You can literally pass along these islands and you're going to see a lot of wildlife. There's seals and everything that are beached on the islands, as well as, again, you're going to see bears that are going to be on the larger landscape on the mountains and stuff like that, and as well as goats and things like that. So there's opportunities to just be able to really travel around there and see that. So excellent opportunities at any one of these cruise ports to be able to see that. So talking about the glaciers, again, the left-hand picture, that's the one that I was at, that I started with. So that is the Dawes Glacier. The one on the right is Hubbard Glacier. So those are two of the glaciers that are very common that the cruise lines will go and see. So again, just awe-inspiring, massive, so impressive to see. Don't waste your time running around the ship to look at them. You will get your chance. Everybody gets a nice vantage point to see these. But if you're just looking to get your steps in, then absolutely do what I did and just run around the ship like a crazy person. But this is why people go. They want to see all this, before they're gone. So take it in, enjoy it, take 800 pictures of ice, because my phone was filled with them. Like as we were getting there and we're just seeing little blocks of ice that's floating in the water, I'm taking pictures of these little blocks of ice. And I'm like, once I got to this glacier, I was like, boy, do I ever feel like an idiot taking a picture of those little blocks of ice that went floating by that I thought were so cool. And then we get to this and go, what was I taking pictures of back there? So yeah, absolutely stunning. Once you've seen all that, you've experienced what you think there is to experience in Alaska, and you think your Alaskan experience is full and complete. Let me assure you, and I take this with a deep bated breath, because my realization, not being a travel agent, when I finished my Alaskan cruise was, wait, there's this option to go further into the interior and to be able to go gold panning and try to look for gold in Alaska, or I can go on this clear domed train and go up into the interior of Alaska and experience even more of this. Well, the answer is yes. There is an opportunity to extend your cruise holiday with our land cruise tours. So typically those other ports are part of a 7-day round trip, either out of Vancouver or Seattle. But there is also the opportunity for a northbound or southbound cruise, which would go from Alaska back to Vancouver, or from Vancouver up to Alaska. And then you can build this land cruise tour portion, either pre-cruise or post-cruise, depending on how you want to build it. But they give you these opportunities to go up into the interior of Alaska, where you get to see Denali National Park. And I mean, you want to see wildlife, you're the outsider there, and they are abundant. And then you stay in the Denali Lodge, or the accommodations that they have provided there for you are just absolutely stunning. And you have that view from the lodge, this gigantic white capped mountain with just unbelievable views. All your transportation is looked after. So you have the railway, you have a highway cruiser that kind of takes you the rest of the way, and gets you far into the interior, to be able to see this incredible wildlife and these amazing sights up close and personal. And it's all done as part of your cruise tour, which is unbelievable. In the bottom there, I just put obviously some of the landmarks that you're going to hit when you're doing those cruise tours. So obviously you're going to cruise into Whittier or Seward, and then from there move on to Anchorage. That's where the airport is. So if you're tying in air, if you're flying into Alaska to start your cruise tour, pre-tour or pre-cruise rather, then you're going to fly into Anchorage and then do the land portion before the cruise. Vice versa, you would start in Vancouver, do your cruise northbound up into Alaska, and then do this post-cruise, and then fly out of Anchorage to come back home. So that's why I just wanted to feature all that and just say that a lot of the different cruise lines that we deal with have this option that you can add on to your cruise. So definitely talk to your cruise specialist from Vacations for Canadians. Ask us about the land cruise tours so that we can bundle that onto your cruise, so that you don't just stop at that 7 days and get to see what I talked about. Because I'm telling you, I was doubling down on excursions during our 7-day cruise to try and see as much of Alaska as I can. And then I found out that this existed and went, well, why did we just do what we did when we could have done this and really experienced all that Alaska had to offer? Just means I have to go back. And then, so I just like, this just shows you, this is a snapshot, because all the cruise lines have some sort of an Alaskan option. It's just that popular. If you're talking about the summer right now, yeah, there's opportunities to go to the Caribbean, but for someone who is just in the Caribbean in the summer, let me tell you, Alaska is a much better option for you. So if you have the opportunity to go to Alaska in the summer, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And not only do we have all these cruise lines that we can offer you opportunities to go Alaska with, but we also have discounted group space with some of these cruise lines that we can offer you opportunities to go to Alaska. So you can save yourself some money from booking direct, book with us, and let's get you a savings on that cruise fare to get you into Alaska. And then we can work with you if you want to add the cruise tour option. We can work with you on the different excursions. Pick my brain for all the different locations that I've been to or haven't been to, but I've done the research on, and I'd be happy to talk to you about what the different options are. Depending on your mobility issues or whatever, we can work together and review any kind of options that you might be interested in for excursions at any one of those cruise ports. So start or end the presentation the same way that I started it, just celebrating myself and our amazing time that we had on our Alaskan cruise. That's the Solstice right behind us, which is cruising Alaska right now. It'll be cruising Alaska again next season. So I'd love to give a little shout out to Celebrity because that was my introduction to Alaska. And you can see on the right-hand side, they have the hot glass blowing on the Solstice, which my wife had the opportunity to do. So we have this lovely piece in our house now that is a great topic of conversation when people come in because we love to show it off, that we did on a freaking cruise when we were going to Alaska. So the fact that we can talk about this blown glass piece that's in our house that we made on a, I say we, I photographed it at least, that we made on this Alaskan cruise, it just added to that overall experience. So definitely, and we have group space for the Solstice for 2025. So if you're interested, reach out to us, and this could be you. You could be standing right outside the Solstice. You could be blowing the glass and making your own decorative piece that you can have in your house and tell those stories. That's it for me.
Thank you, Matt. It sure is a beautiful place to visit. Your pictures really showcase it beautifully. It's something you have to see with your own eyes, like you said. It's really, the pictures don't do it justice. I know we say that all the time, but in Alaska, it's so, so true. And I can really relate to you taking pictures of those little ice cubes in the water, and then you see the big glacier, and you're like, whoa, what's this? Because it is really something, and it really builds up and works up to it. We were there, actually. I think we had as good of weather at the last sailing in this season as you did in August, because we didn't have to wear toques or hat or gloves. But we were the second last sailing of the season, and the deals that we found at the shops, because they were closing up for the whole the winter. So it was a shopper's mecca. But when we stopped in Icy Strait Point, we actually did a cooking demonstration. And that was really, really amazing because they are very passionate about their salmon. And I thought I knew salmon, I thought I knew how to cook salmon, but boy, we got to make these salmon patties, and they explained all the different varieties of salmon, where they come from, the premium stuff. It was like really, really interesting to see how passionate they are, because that's such a local delicacy for them, or a local fish for them. So it was quite amazing. So thank you for sharing your experience, and thank you for sharing that with our guests and watchers here. So we're going to move over to Mr. Luke, and he's going to talk to us about cruise ship staterooms. That's a mouthful there.
Excellent. Well, you know what? I'll touch on Alaska too a little bit, because I got the privilege of going to Alaska last August. And first of all, we had amazing weather, and the experience was far beyond what I ever expected. As Canadians, who wants to leave Canada, where we have snow all winter, and go to Alaska, which potentially there's more snow there, but in theory, it's excellent weather, excellent. The scenery is outstanding. We thought we had seen everything. We've been through the Rockies, we've been through different places in the Caribbean, but the scenery out of Alaska, and as Matt said, balconies. If you sit on your balcony, depending on which side of the ship you're on, if you go to a glacier and it does turn around and switches from side to side, so everybody gets to see, but also it's the view you have while you're moving from one port to the other. It's just outstanding. And one of the biggest thing that caught my attention is eagles. The bald eagle has to be my favorite bird of all time, and I've got to see tons of them in Alaska. and I even have a video on my camera. Again, cameras are very important to take on an Alaskan cruise. I actually saw an eagle fly, swoop down and pick up a fish out of the water and left and was eating it as he's flying away. Outstanding experience. But anyways, Alaska, not to miss. And this moves on to cruise ship staterooms. Wow. Obviously, you can't go on a cruise without finding your perfect destination, but then you need somewhere to stay. You need accommodations, and staterooms are a huge factor. Where do I want to stay in an inside cabin? Do I want an ocean view? Do I want a balcony? Do I want to upgrade to a suite, given the fact that you might be celebrating an event, or you just want a suite to bring your family with you? So you'll notice here a couple of pictures, one of which is a porthole style balcony, the side of a ship that has what the side of a ship looks like with balconies, and obviously the what it looks like just sitting on a balcony. And we'll move on to our next slide. So what I'm going to touch on tonight is the different types of staterooms in general, types of staterooms. Where do we find these types of staterooms on throughout the ship? What kind of categories? Because every stateroom has a different category to determine, where they are on the ship. And then we'll summarize at the end with a bit of cabin tips that I'll throw in there as a bonus at the end. All right, let's move on here. All right, staterooms. Well, staterooms are like hotel rooms. Some of them have windows. Some of them are inside cabins or interior cabins. Some of them have virtual balconies. We'll say it's a big screen TV on the wall that you can close some curtains, and it gives you the perspective that you actually got a balcony. Usually they have a desk or a small sitting area. Obviously, we have our one-piece washroom in a sense, because you have your shower, your utilities, and depending on the size of cabin that you actually get, sometimes the washrooms can be a little bit bigger. And when you get into a suite, then you have a lot more luxury that goes with it. And of course, I just had to put one of those towel animals, because a lot of our room stewards will put these towel animals onto our bed to show that they've cleaned your room. And some people will actually collect them, stick them somewhere, and they have the variety of them that they've had throughout the week. All right, so let's move on to types of staterooms. So here I've actually put a small group of images to kind of define the types of staterooms. As I mentioned, so if we start clockwise from the top left, we have an interior room. Interior rooms are usually facing the interior of the ship. They're on the inside of the ship. There are many different types of interior rooms. Some are accommodate 2 people, some accommodate more, they accommodate a family, but also there are some cruise lines and some ships that will also accommodate a solo cabin, particularly on the inside, which is usually just one bed, and it's a smaller room. The next one is ocean view. Ocean view is a room very similar to what you find in an interior. And it'll usually have, as you can see in the picture, this one here has a square window. Some rooms will have more commonly known as a porthole, which is a round window. Some of them are small, some of them are bigger, and so on. And then you can move on to balcony. A balcony usually has a patio door, just like your home would, and you have access to a balcony space that faces, you're basically outside the ship, just like you would in an apartment, and so on. And usually they come with 2 chairs and a table, so you can put your drinks or your snacks or whatever in the afternoon if you want to have a drink. And then we'll move down. Some of these arrows are a little off here. What we have here is on some of the celebrity ships. If you have an Edge class ship, and the Icon of the Seas now has what's called an infinity balcony. An infinity balcony, you still have that balcony space, but in theory, that window that you see there, it's kind of divided into two. You have the top half, the bottom half. That window actually slides down, and it gives you access as if you had a balcony, but you can also close it. But you can have that advantage of that additional room space or that additional square footage, because you still have access to your table, and your 2 chairs to have that drink in the afternoon on a rainy day. Or if it's really windy and you want some quiet time, but you still want the view of the ocean, an infinity balcony is a nice to have. Bottom center, we have what's called either a mini suite or a junior suite, depending on what cruise line you sail with. And that typically is a balcony suite that's actually bigger, wider, allows you a little more space. I was in a junior suite on the Anthem of the Seas, and it almost looked like or felt like it was a cabin and a half from a width perspective. So you had more room to sit, you had more room to hide your luggage while you're at sea and that kind of stuff. But also it didn't feel as cramped or as small as your regular cabins would. And then you move into the suite world. And the suites are, depending on the cruise line, depending on the age of the ship, can go anywhere from, a 1-bedroom suite to a 2-bedroom suite with all kinds of perks and things that come with the suite. But also if you move into newer ships like some of the Oasis class ships, particularly the newer ones like Wonder and Harmony of the Seas, or even if you go to the Icon of the Seas, where they have family suites with slides and as you can see in the picture here, it's kind of like a 2-story suite where your bedroom's upstairs, and then downstairs you have like a full living room. Some have dining room tables. I've actually seen some with a piano. It's just amazing. And also, because your room is that much bigger, you have a huge balcony. You can actually invite your friends that are staying in an inside cabin and show them how royalty lives and how it feels to be in a suite. So, you can kind of tease them a little bit, but obviously suites have their spot. Primarily if you like that style of cruising, or even if it's for a special event, 25th anniversary or a wedding or whatever it may be. All right. And as I stated before, there's different sizes of cabins or staterooms. There's solo rooms. There's some that are designed for couples. So as you see in our ads, sometimes we'll actually say 2 adults. Those are rooms that are more specific to those that cruise as a couple, or cruise as friends if you want. You might be decided to grab one of your friends and say, let's go on a cruise and let's get out of Dodge City, and so on. Family cruising. This is where you get into cabins that will hold 3, 4, and there are some cruise lines and some ships that will accommodate up to 5 people in a cabin. And also, as well, there are cabins on most ships that are accessible to those in wheelchairs or those in mobility scooters and so on. And as you'll see in the picture below, the bottom right is your typical cabin. Sometimes the sofa bed will turn into to accommodate 1, possibly 2 people, mostly kids. And then the photo on the left, this is a cabin that accommodates 4 passengers. There are bunks that flip over onto the wall in this particular case, or on other cruise ship, they're called berths, and they're basically pulled down from the ceiling. So you can pull 1 down or 2 down. My wife and I did a cruise with our kids multiple times, and we'd always get an adjoining room leave the door open so that we can, make sure the kids are behaving themselves and not destroying the cabin. But in theory, we had 2 kids sleeping on the bottom, and then we had a berth pulled down so that we could accommodate a 3rd child. Again, staterooms mostly accommodate anywhere between 1 person all the way to a complete family. Stateroom location. So stateroom locations, typically you'll find on the interior of the ship, and I'll show some graphics later to kind of in one of my next slides in terms of what kind of like a ship layout, or and we'll show you where these rooms typically are found. So in an interior, you'll find a studio or a solo stateroom or cabin or room. People have different terminologies depending on who we are. There's the inside interior. Again, some cruise lines like to use the word inside, some use the word interior. They're one and the same. I put here promenade view interior cabin. These are more, these are cabins that will face they're inside cabins, but they usually have a window that you can see into the center of the ship. So Royal Caribbean, starting, Liberty of the Seas, as an example, has a promenade in the middle of the ship, and they have cabins that you can look down into the promenade. And so those cabins have windows. And as I mentioned earlier, and it's not listed here, is inside interior cabins that have a virtual balcony. So on Anthem of the Seas, for instance, my wife and I had a balcony suite, and across the hall we put the kids in an interior with the screen. And the thing is then what happens then is, in an interior cabin, a lot of times you don't know day from night because it's always dark, versus when you have a virtual balcony, you can kind of leave the curtains open a little bit, and as the sun rises, you can actually see that side of the ship. So whichever side you're facing or looking at from a view perspective, that's the side of the ship that there's cameras that you get to see what's on the outside of the ship. And there are some balconies on the inside, surprisingly. So as an example, Royal Caribbean has the Oasis class and now the Icon class, where they basically have the ship that's almost divided into 2, where there are balconies on the outside and there are balconies facing the interior. On the Oasis of the Seas, for instance, in the center of the ship, you have Central Park, or you have the boardwalk, and those have inward-facing balconies. On the exterior of the ship, ocean view balconies, or ocean view, which those are the ones I showed earlier with the porthole. There's the ocean view balconies. There's also mini suites, and there's also suites. Those would be on the exterior of the ship, and they would all have balconies. So those are different types of rooms, and where do you find them on the interior of the ship versus the exterior of the ship? All right, so now on my next slide. So location. When you pick your room, one of the key things that, I don't know why the image got turned sideways. Oh, I'm not going to go on. I'm going to go back here. Sorry. This was supposed to be a ship deck, showing the front of the ship versus the rear of the ship. So the bow is the front, the stern is the rear, and then you have 2 sides. You have a port side and a starboard side. So if you talk to your travel agent or you see people making comments, I prefer to be on the port side versus being on the starboard side. Some people have a preference of where to be. The other thing to consider as well when you're picking your stateroom is if you want a forward-facing cabin, a midship cabin, or a rear face, not necessarily facing, but it's at the back end of the ship. And some people prefer, a midship versus forward or aft. Some people, there's no preference. So it's up to each individual to decide what they prefer. And after you've cruised a couple of times, you kind of tend to stick to, midship, depending on motions of the ocean and everything else. So it's all about preference. Hopefully my next slide. These images were turned sideways. My apologies. So basically what I wanted to show here was on the ship, you have different decks, and different decks have different configurations of how those rooms are found. And I have one of the image to show the difference between a ship that only has inside cabins and balconies on the outside. And then the bottom image was to show that there's actually decks that may have internal facing, but also internal facing balcony suites or cabins. Hopefully, oh, there you go. So maybe this image will help us a little bit here. So what we have here, again, to explain the stateroom categories, you'll notice at the top we have the yellow, and then in the center we have other cabins, and then the ones on the outside. So I'll break this down a little more. So the ones that are on the outside, and typically in the yellow, not necessarily in all cases, but in this particular case with regards to this image, these are ocean view cabins. So they're actually on the outside. You'll notice that sometimes you'll see a ship, you'll see the deck, the deck where the captain, steers the ship, or the bridge. That's what I was looking for, the word bridge. The bridge, and underneath that you'll see porthole windows, and those porthole windows are those ocean view that sometimes face the front or maybe on the side of the ship. In the center of the image, those are inside facing cabins. And those inside facing cabins are inside or interior. And then you'll notice some that are slightly a little different color, and they have a double arrow pointing to each other. So those are connecting inside cabins, for example, meaning these cabins are, you could basically book two cabins side by side, open the door between them just like you would in a connecting hotel room, and then you have access to both sides. So some people, what they do is the adults, the parents sleep on one side of the cabin, and in the other cabin, they put their children or their teenagers or whoever. So that way, if they get too loud, they close the door, and so on. On the outside, this is where you'll find your balconies. On the exterior of the ship, your balconies. And again, on the balconies, you do also have connecting rooms. In the connecting rooms, again, as by definition, they're two rooms that are combined together so you can attach them. That doesn't mean that you can't reserve a cabin that is connecting. It just means that unless you know the person next to you, that door stays closed between the two cabins. And in our case, on the Anthem of the Seas, it actually has two doors. There's the one side of the door and the other side. And what we used to do, because we traveled with friends, is in the morning when we were ready, we opened our door. And then when they were ready, they opened their door. And when the two doors were open, we knew that it was time for us to go for breakfast, go for lunch, go for dinner, go and do whatever activities. The other thing too is, and I apologize for the image, there's also accessibility cabins, and each ship has a percentage of accessibility rooms. And you'll notice in the graphic, I know it's small, just below, I think it would almost be like a lighter blue color. You'll notice there's a wheelchair. That just means that those cabins are wheelchair accessible. The doors are wider. There's more room in the cabin to be able to move around with a wheelchair. All right. So in summary, which stateroom is right for you? Well, the question you have to ask yourself is, if you spend a lot of time doing ship activities, maybe you lean towards an inside cabin, because that way, you spend only the time to sleep in the cabin. You don't spend time in the cabin. So you may want to save a few dollars and stay in an inside cabin. If you're like my wife and I, we prefer a balcony because, when we're at sea or we're pulling into port or we're taking an Alaskan cruise and we want to see what the scenery looks like, you sit on your balcony, you have a drink, You order food service, but you wait till it gets there so you don't have to go running for it, looking for it, and you enjoy the scenery. One of the biggest thing, as an example, my wife likes to sit there at night just to listen to the ocean. It calms her down, and then she has a great night's sleep. So balconies do have their benefits. And like I said, suites are always an option to consider, because they have their benefits. You know, you may have a concierge that will serve you. You have access to certain benefits on the ship, you know, special dining and other things. So which stateroom is right for you? Only you can answer that question, but we are more than capable and able to help you select if the time comes. You know, if you don't know if you want to stay at the forward of the ship versus the stern versus the midship, or whichever. Another thing that I didn't message because I got a little bit distracted by the images being flipped around is where on the ship you want to be. Do you want to be on a higher deck, or do you want to be a little lower so you're kind of centered between heading to the buffet or heading down to the bars and the clubs and the restaurants and so on. So there's a lot of factor that goes into selecting a room. Some of us have already a preference, and when we start looking at an itinerary, the first thing we do is, all right, what balconies do we have, and where are they on the ship, and is it meeting our needs? Now, and I said at the beginning that I had a few free tips for you. Let me find my note here. Oh, here it is. A couple of free tips when talking about staterooms. Did you know that you can hide your luggage under the bed for the most part? The beds are high enough that you can fit most luggages right under the bed. Another cool tip, magnets. Magnets are a game changer when going on a cruise. Magnets, most cabin walls are made out of metal, obviously to make them fireproof, and the way they're fabricated, they're like these boxes that are put together on the ship. You can get these magnets. We get ours on Amazon. There's different types of hooks. Some of them are hooks. Some of them are little clips where you can clip things. I hang my hats. We hang our towels. We hang our lanyard. If you have a lanyard with your SeaPass card or your ship card and so on. Magnets are a game changer because it gets things off the desk. It gets things off the floor, and it gives you somewhere else to hang things, because some cabins are fairly small. And the older ships don't have as much storage space. And the last one is power cords. Older ships, even newer ships, are very limited in the amount of cords we have. But to Matt's point earlier, we talk about, we have cell phones, we have cameras, we have all kinds of things that we need to charge. And some people have, CPAP machines and stuff. And one of the key things, one of the key items that I bring with me all the time is a power bar, but a non-surge power bar. It has to be a non-surge. You can find them on Amazon for $20, $30, and they have a combination of different plugs and USB and USB-C plugs on them. So those three tips are highly recommended. I use them myself. Hide the luggage, plug stuff in, and hang stuff on the wall. And that's it for me from a stateroom perspective. Back to you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Luke. Those are great pointers and tips. Especially there's always lots of luggage that you got to put somewhere, right? So under the bed is a perfect storage spot for it. I'm glad that you touched upon the cabins for more than two people. So we often get asked, like, where the third and fourth person going to sleep? Is because there's these hidden beds that just drop down. And your stateroom attendant is going to be terrific at getting that set up for you every day so that it's all taken care of. So they do fit. If it's a quad capacity, you'll be able to get 4 people sleeping in there, no problem. And, there's a stateroom for every budget. There's, I always like to look at the maps of the ship. And if there's an aft pool, that's where I tend to hang out. So I will pick a stateroom that's close to that because I want to be able to zip up the stairs and get to the pool. If I forget my sunscreen or need to go back to the cabin for something, it's quick and easy access. So I find I don't have a preferred spot every single time. It really depends on where I'm sailing and kind of what the amenities are that I'm going to be likely to use. So it's always fun to pick that out. Great. Thank you so much for that. I think there's been some great questions that have been brewing. Linda, have you got a few of them lined up for us?
I sure do. We have some questions here. I'm going to start with the one that's directly directed to you, Karen. Lisa wanted to know, when did you go to Alaska?
We sailed the end of September. So we were on NCL Bliss, which is a dynamite ship for Alaska. It was actually made for Alaska. They have a beautiful observation lounge at the very front of the ship. So when Matt was running all over the place looking for the best spot, it was right there. It was, you had beautiful loungers and sofas that you can just dig your, sink into with a nice hot chocolate and a book and just watch the glaciers sail by. So it was late in the season, but we had great weather. We did have a little bit of rain, but as expected, it was, we planned for kind of the fall-ish type of weather, and that's exactly what we got. So great deals at the shops because they were trying to clear everything out, and terrific sailing. Great question.
Awesome. Sandy would like to know, are there excursions available for us older folks who might not be able to do the physically challenging activities?
Yeah, I can tackle that. I mean, some of the ones that I discussed are actually some of those exact types of excursions. So like the White Pass Railway, there is no limitations on the mobility issues for that. And I mean, it's 45 minutes out by train, 45 minutes back. So, you're looking at an hour and a half of just an enjoyable scenic railway ride. A lot of the different locations in Alaska have tours that are either built around the heritage or the food or beverages, which takes you on scenic tours, all with transportation options, with guest speakers, depending on some of the cruise lines that you go on. And in addition to all those excursions, there are amazing naturalists that are on board the ships that give you the most informative presentations leading up to those cruise ports. So in addition to visiting those places, I would highly recommend attending the presentations as well, because it's almost like you're preparing yourself before you go to really have in store what it is you're going to see and where to look for it and what kind of things to anticipate when you arrive at that port. But absolutely, depending on the cruise line that you book, look at what's available in your cruise planners, reach out to us, and we can go through it with you, because we usually have access to all those cruise planners, and we can go through all those different options with you and highlight some of the ones that may be better suited for you based on your mobility requirements.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So the next question up is from Kate, and I'm not sure if this is in regard to Alaska or just in general. She's asking, are group trips available for next summer yet?
If it's in regards to Alaska, then absolutely. That's what I touched on that during the presentation, where I said that we have group rates available. Depending on the cruise line, we have group rates available. For Norwegian, we have group rates available. For Royal Caribbean, we have group rates available for Celebrity. So depending on what ports you want to go to, and also if you want to sail out of Vancouver or if you want to sail out of Seattle, because if you sail out of Seattle, of course, Alaska being in the United States, Seattle cruises have to make a stop in Canada in order to make it a legal cruise, because they can't stay domestic. They have to get outside of the US. So they have a stop in Victoria. And sailing out of Seattle is absolutely amazing, because you can also build on excursions at the end of your cruise, where you can go into Seattle and see Pike Place Market. You can go see the original Starbucks. You can go see, after you have blown glass on the Solstice, go over and check out the blown glass museum that's right next to the Space Needle. and see how the professionals actually do it, and see some of the most amazing blown glass that you'll ever look at in your life. But Seattle is an amazing cruise port for Alaskan cruises as well. But depending on the cruise line, depending on the ship, they will either sail out of Vancouver or and we have discounted group rates for both.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Cheryl is asking, if we didn't do a closed loop, are flights hard to organize, and can you help with that?
Want me to go again?
That's up to the other agents.
Depending on the cruise line. Like, I mean, there's obviously a lot of the airlines a lot of the cruise lines have air packages that you can add on to that. So whether it be air by sea with Royal Caribbean, whether it be flights by Celebrity, whether it be the air packages that are available through Princess or Holland America, you can build that on to your cruise fare, and you can either pay for it up front, so you have the option to select seats and things like that, so you have a little bit more flexibility on the front end, or you can defer your payment until your final cruise payment and then pay it all at the same time. So that way you can kind of build your budget and work your way towards that final payment and just defer your air portion, but you lock in the price early and then pay for it towards the end. So there is the ability, even if you're doing a closed loop, that we can help out with air, whether it be Vancouver or Seattle, depending on what your major air hub is. We can work with the cruise lines and look at what the options are with those different cruise lines for their air packages, and then give you some different quotes for that.
Great. The next question, I think, is directed toward Luke, although I'm sure any of our advisors would be able to answer it. Which floor with a balcony at midship is better for people who get seasick?
It all depends. If you, what was I going to say here? In most cases, midship, mid-level, so if you have cabins that range between floor 6 and floor 12, you might want to find yourself in the middle. By being in the middle of the ship, you're kind of in the middle of the movement, either mostly it's side by side. It's not as much forward and back movement. So those people that have seasickness tend to pick midship and mid-floor. Some have actually said that, I think it's individually based. Some have actually said that they prefer the lowest floor, so they'll actually go and settle themselves like on the 3rd or 4th deck in an inside cabin, because the motion there, to them, it feels less because you're closer to the water level. So for the most part, it's midship would be recommended, and then it depends on the individual between a bottom deck or a mid-level deck.
Great. Next question is for Matt. What is the excursion tasting the salmon?
Oh, so there is a couple of different options that you can do for tasting the salmon, but the ones that I would always encourage people to look for are the salmon bake. So anything where you're actually going to get, not going to like a traditional restaurant or something like that, where you're going to get more removed, more into the wilderness, where it's going to be done over an open fire. You have a live music element to it. You have handcrafted souvenirs that are being made by people right there. Something where you're going to get a lot more of the culture aspect of it, where you can enjoy that amazing food, but at the same time be able to have all that cultural experience to go with it. All of that part and parcel with each other is what you're looking for. So it's really intuitive of you to read the descriptions on the shore excursions to see what's included. So if you see in that description that it's talking about live music and that there's vendors on site or anything like that, that's what you're looking for. If it, like, especially even some of these fishing trips, whatever you catch, they'll cook for you at the end of it. So I would even say some of the fishing trips have that option where what you catch is what you're eating. And if you don't catch anything, no meal at the end. But that's what you're looking for.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. So the next question was to Luke. Can you mention what kind of power bar? You were talking about power bars.
If you do a search on, let's say, Amazon or even Google, just do a search for power bar non-surge, or even do a search using the word cruising or cruise/power bar, and they'll come up. But the biggest thing here is the non-surge capability.
Perfect. Next question is from Jean asking, is there much of a price difference to sail out of Seattle?
It depends on the cruise line, but honestly, when I look at the differences between Vancouver and Seattle, and I'm talking with clients about what their options are with those, I also try to bring in the flight portion, because strangely enough, and we haven't figured this out in Canada yet, I don't know why, but domestic airfare is ridiculous. And so sometimes the option to fly to Seattle is cheaper than Vancouver, and the flight times are almost the same. So if you have the same sort of flight time, but you can get a better flight price to get to Seattle, unless you live on the West Coast and you're already in Vancouver, then it's a no-brainer. And even then, they might want to drive to Seattle just so they can go on a city tour or something like that and tie that into their cruise. But if we're just looking at adding the flight on there, that can make a real difference. So I would say that for whatever variance there is in cruise, take into consideration your flight price as well, because that might make Seattle a more attractive option for you. And then you get the opportunity to go to Victoria as well if you're cruising out of Seattle, whereas any of the Vancouver ones never include Victoria, and Victoria is absolutely stunning. So it's definitely worth seeing if you haven't been there, and wrap it into your cruise.
Great. So the next question comes from Diane, and I think we can probably give each of the advisors that have traveled to Alaska an opportunity to answer this question. She is asking, would you recommend a particular cruise line for an Alaskan cruise? So do we want to start? Maybe we'll just go down the row. Karen, Matt, I don't know, Luke, if you have a recommendation, and Rick as well.
So my experiences with Norwegian Cruise Line, they were fantastic. We did leave out of Seattle as well, so we did have that Victoria stop, which was lovely. It was dynamite. There's nothing I would change about it. But I also think about Love Boat and Princess. So when I think about my grandparents' first cruise, I think of Princess Cruises, and it was to Alaska. So they've been doing it for a long time as well. So I think they've got something good going on that side too.
In my case, it was with Royal Caribbean on Brilliance of the Seas. Excellent experience, excellent ship, excellent service. It all depends on maybe the itinerary. It may depend on what your budget is. It could depend on availability. Alaska is, it's a short season when you think about it. As Matt said, it's May to September, short season. It's in high demand. So sometimes it's looking at multiple cruise lines and seeing which one fits best.
This is a good range because we've got Norwegian, we've got Royal Caribbean. Mine is obviously Celebrity. I did the Solstice. I love the S-Class of ships on Celebrity. So getting to do the Solstice to do Alaska was amazing. I did the Aqua Class, which was such a smart choice on our part, because being able to be in that the Persian Garden spa and laying on those heated beds and watching the coastline going by as we were sailing through Alaska, they would call it on the loudspeaker with the captain as we were passing by whales. I could literally stand up off my heated bed and go up to the glass while I was in the spa and look at the orcas that are swimming beside our ship, and then just go back onto my heated bed and read my book. But just so much that I loved about Celebrity. But I would also pair in with what Karen was saying about Princess. Princess has a lot of awards that they've won for Alaskan cruises, and they are tied in with the Discovery Channel. And that's where I was talking about those naturalists that are on board. they have some incredible naturalists that are on board that do the presentations about the different ports that you're going to that are very informative. And like I said before, they have that cruise tour option as well, just like Celebrity, just like Norwegian, just like Royal Caribbean. But again, award-winning, and being tied into the Discovery Channel and having access to all those different naturalists, there is a whole nother element that comes in with Princess. But, you know, in my heart of hearts, I still go with Celebrity.
Well, if you read all the marketing that comes out of the cruise lines, they all say they're the best. And the fact of the matter is they're all very close. Based on what I've seen, comments I've heard back from clients, I think Princess has a slight edge. Princess and Holland, they're the same family. But really, you can't go wrong with any of them, because it's a very competitive environment out there. So they're all going to be pretty close.
Great, thank you. And I will note that Tina said in the comments, because she's not on stage with us here tonight, that she's been there on Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and Celebrity, and all were fantastic. So she actually was there not too long ago, and we were following all her activities on our cruise deals page. And last question, as far as I can see, unless anybody drops another one in there, is from Donna. And she's asking, Matt, did you do the excursion for the Hubbard Glacier? Is it expensive? Wondering if it would be worth it.
So I will say no. And because, yes, it is pricey. And so it kind of priced myself out because, like I said, I was trying to pack a lot of excursions in. So sometimes it was about quantity versus quality. So I was trying to get a lot of excursions in. So just because we were trying to do so much, we priced ourselves out of that experience. But seeing, like, Tina went on the glacier and like seeing the photos, and I was like, this is exactly the experience that I would want, is that being able to walk on the glaciers, being able to go dog sledding, holding those little husky puppies in my hands, you know, like, come on, how do you not want that experience? But yes, I priced myself out of it and didn't get to do it on that cruise. But if you budget for it, I promise you it will not disappoint.
Okay, so you forced me to come on stage. So I'm going to answer this because I've actually been to Alaska 3 times. So for me, I'd already been to Skagway and Ketchikan, and you know, so we did do a few excursions. But speaking of budget, we did leave the majority of our budget for walking on the glacier, and we took a small plane. You could do helicopter, small plane, whatever. We actually did ours. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank where we did it. It was north. It wasn't Hubbard Glacier, but the experience was surreal. It was like something I've never done, and I would have paid double. Honestly, it was just like, the experience can't be matched on anything that I've ever done in Alaska. So absolutely, I would say if you can budget it in, then for sure you should do it.
Thank you.
Awesome. I think that is all of our questions. So I'm going to hand it back to Karen to wrap up, and then I'll do the giveaway.
Great, thank you. So I think, you know, you'd have me at the puppies, you know, when it comes to those dog sleds. I mean, if you can just kind of cuddle and snuggle with those, I think I'd probably try to bring a few of those guys home. That's amazing information and great questions. So thank you all for joining us. It's been a very, very lots of dialogue, lots of great questions. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for submitting your questions and for your engagement. It really helps to kind of bring this to life for us when we can bring you into the fold as well. And now we've got a prize giveaway. So that's that tote that we were promising, a Vacations for Canadians tote. And Linda, have you got that lined up so we can give that wheel a spin?
I do. And it doesn't, the error is not occurring. We have 25 entries, so everybody gets entered once. If it does happen to choose one of our advisors, because we aren't able to screen those out, we'll just draw again. So we're going to give that a go. Amanda Simpson, congratulations.
Great.
Congratulations.
That's
So
great.
you are the winner
Amanda
I
just booked an Alaskan cruise on the solstice. She literally just booked an Alaskan cruise.
Perfect.
Oh,
as
that's
that.
awesome. So we have all of Amanda's information then, and we will get her prize sent out to her.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And I can't quite seem to move our slide to the next one. But if you have any questions about any of the cruises we talked about, if you've got something in mind, you'd like us to quote something, by all means, send us an email, send us a message on our Facebook pages. We'd love to help you out and get the perfect cruise underway. Thank you so much. We will see you again next Wednesday at the same time, same place. Have a great week, everyone.
Good night.
Bye all.
Good night, everyone.